Hello everybody, welcome back to Animation Hour. Oh my goodness. I gotta tell you, never has a month in my life passed by so quickly. So in the last video, I kind of offhandedly humble bragged about how I was planning on buying a house. And I gotta say, the karma caught up to me almost immediately, because oh my goodness, that is a complicated process, especially if you do things the way I did them, which is to say, not intelligently. So yeah, it's just been constant speed bumps and little issues to overcome, and oh, it's been a nightmare. But yeah, so that's kind of like the main reason that I haven't recorded another one of these, because for one, I've just been way too busy with all of that, and also the time that I do have, I've just been so stressed out that I don't feel like doing anything. I just don't have the energy for this channel. But most of the difficult parts are over right now, so we're kind of back on column C's, and I feel like I can sit down and actually talk about some stuff and maybe produce a video like I said I would over a month ago. Feels good. So I almost feel a little silly going into this one, because I had said last time about, how the entire purpose behind changing the name was so that we could discuss other animation-related topics, but this one is going to be very Fanime-centric again as well. I know a few people watching this were probably at the stream the other day, wherein we watched a bunch of Fanime weekly challenges, which was something that started all the way back in late 2015. I started up a challenge wherein the idea was to produce at least one episode of a show per week for a period of about 13 weeks and thus end up with a completed season of a show. And that was kind of it. The goal was just to release weekly and complete a season over a period of about 13 weeks, which was a pretty silly challenge in the first place, because originally I had planned on participating in it, and I ended up not doing that. Because not only was I extremely busy at that point in time, working 2 jobs and, struggling to pay massive bills every month, but this was also during the time a very prominent Fanime-centric roleplay was going on. So, there was a lot of things going on that prevented me and some other people from even being really part of it. And in light of all that, I actually didn't end up watching a lot of the shows that had gotten made for it at the time. Even though it was my idea in the first place, and the entire reason I made it was because I wanted more shows to watch, I ended up not actually watching most of them. So we sat down and streamed a lot of them yesterday, and we're going to probably stream some more of them a week or so from now, just whenever we have time, and watch the rest of them, because there was actually a second weekly challenge, which was the year after, hosted by someone else entirely. But I gotta say, I am honestly surprised by the sheer volume of content that actually did come out of this challenge, because I remember just kind of glancing at some of the titles as they were being posted. I remember talking about them on Fanime Update and such, and just, thinking that most of them were short videos, a minute or less, and so on, and that it wouldn't really be that much. So when I started the stream, I was thinking it would take maybe 4 to 5 hours to watch all of them. But after a 5-hour stream, we were finished with almost all of the 2015 weekly challenge videos, but there were still, 3 left, and then there was the entire 2016 run. So this was a decent amount of content that got produced from this whole thing. And there were some pretty good shows there, and I figured I'd take a moment just to very quickly talk about them, since I never got the opportunity to do that in the past. So one of the first things we watched was What You Can't See by Emily Loves Cookies, which was an interesting thing.
Join the student council. We're now accepting people.
I think it's still available on her channel. You have to go to a playlist to view it. It's all unlisted except for, I think, the first episode, but you can still watch it. It's about a girl that can see ghosts and ghosts trying to become human again. I don't know. It's a little bit convoluted and a little bit rushed. So the story was kind of confusing, and I didn't pay maybe as close attention as I should have during that. But it's one of many shows for this challenge that actually got almost all the way to the end and then just didn't finish, just gave up right before the end. So, by the time we hit episode, I want to say 8, 9, or 10, something around there, it was starting to build up towards something. Things were just starting to get interesting, and then it cut off. So that I must say, although there certainly was a lot of content made for this challenge, there were so many cliffhangers, more than usual. It's common in Fanime that a show just kind of doesn't get continued or just drops off at a certain point, and you're left wondering what happens next. But usually that happens after 1, 2, maybe 3 episodes. So there's usually not much buildup at that point in a story. It's typically just, okay, here's the premise, here are the characters. And then if it ends there, you're not really left hanging that much because the story hasn't been set up yet, like fully. Like it hasn't swung up, it hasn't reached the point where it's nearing the top. But a lot of these shows like ended just before the last episode. Like all they needed was one more episode to conclude the story. And just didn't have that. There were at least 3 that did that. And it was extremely frustrating. And now I'm going to hound all those people to find out what happens next. But yeah, after that, there was a one episode of Marumi Mahomi by Petite Kiara. It's about a girl that goes into a bakery shop, which also, I believe, gets her involved with some magical girl shenanigans. But this one was just a single episode. It didn't actually get continued on a weekly basis. So we had kind of the premise of a concept, but not much more than that. It was very well done, though. Very good looking, stylistically pleasing. So I would like to have seen where it was going. Another show we watched was Erstwhile by Casserole Chan. There were 6 episodes of it, if I recall. It was another one of those ones that was just starting to get interesting right before it ended. So we're introduced to the characters, we're introduced to the world, we kind of start to get to know like how things work in this world. It's a very strange place, and something is going on that's not explained, and you can tell that these elements are all tied in somehow, and that it's all going to pay off later. Like there's going to be some type of reveal, to how this all concludes, where it's all going, but it just doesn't get there because it was unfinished. So just add that one, add Casserole Chan to the list of people that need to bother about, how the story ends. Although I did actually like the show quite a bit. I mean, the atmosphere of it was really good. The audio was really good. Like, the voicing was spot on.
What's in the book?
Everything.
Everything?
Everything that ever is and was. Besides you.
Pretty believable performance from all involved. I thought it was pretty solid in the audio department. And again, the world was very interesting. I liked what it was doing. I liked what it was building up. And I really did want to see where it was going, but yeah, maybe someday. And then Melty Chan submitted Pesh. There were 2 episodes of Pesh, or Peche, I don't know. One character pronounced it Pesh, the other pronounced it Peche.
Peche.
I'm pretty sure it's Pesh, though. Which is just kind of I want to say more of a character piece than anything. It didn't really present much of a plot. It says, hey, this guy's a vampire, and he has vampire friends, and he's also befriended this human girl who's cute and silly, but doesn't really speak words, except for, like, I think she says his name one time. I don't know. It was really interesting, though, and I liked what it was doing. The characters were fun. And that's pretty important in any show. I think compelling and interesting characters that's kind of the foundation of any good show. It doesn't matter how ridiculous your plot is. If your characters are, first of all, believable, or at the very least interesting in some way, whether they're just engaging, they're relatable, maybe you just really want to see, maybe you really believe what they believe in, and you want to see what they do about it. I don't know, but it's just well conveyed characters are like the building blocks of anything. If you have a solid cast of characters, I'm convinced that you can tell any story no matter how stupid it is, and I dare anyone to take me up on that challenge. I would love to see it. I would love to see a story about spaghetti and clowns and, I don't know, cats shaped like bananas, but with a solid cast of characters, just to sell it like crazy. It's kind of like how a good salesman can sell anything, no matter how useless it is. That's kind of the comparison I would make. Sell it with a smile, so they say, pretty face. And yeah, Pesh definitely had that going for it. So even though I had no idea what it was actually about, I was really looking forward to seeing where it would go. Now, next on the list, I'm kind of just going through the list one by one, because it's easy content. But I didn't have much of an opportunity. I didn't give myself much time to really talk about how I felt about every show. I kind of reacted a little bit here and there throughout the course of the stream itself. But I didn't take the time to properly address each show. And I know I said I wasn't going to necessarily address every single thing that came out like we used to do in the old podcast, but it's still something that I like to do, right? So predecessor of A New World, I thought, is a little bit slow-paced, a little bit too slow-paced for my liking. I think that was the only thing holding it back, though, because the characters were pretty interesting. I thought the characters were good, and they all had their different personalities. I don't know if there were necessarily enough good moments to establish the character. I would like to have seen more character interaction, more I don't know, counterplay and things, just see how they kind of bounce off of each other. But it had the right building blocks, you know, and the story was interesting, to say the least. I didn't necessarily know where it was going, but by the end of it, I was curious to find out, and I definitely feel very strongly about the last episode. Now, I said it like that. I thought the pacing was a little bit slow. I would say the first 6 episodes drag a little bit because you don't necessarily know what you're building up toward. But by the time it ends, it's really good. And I liked the last episode a lot because that little montage moment where the music starts playing and every character kind of has their moment. They show like how all their talents complement each other. That was like what the whole show should have been to me. And it was fantastic. Like if there was a whole show of that, I think I would rate that very, very highly. I would love to see more of, you know, that type of thing, where you've got the group and they're all working toward this goal, and you see how they each, you know, play off of each other. Really solid finale, I would say, on that one. And also, more importantly, it had a finale. It ended, which in itself is impressive and just so satisfying. I love when a story gets concluded because it's so rare that it actually happens. So I gotta give special props to Tenchi Hanka, or rather Otaku Crap, for actually completing the entire challenge and hitting that 13 episode mark and just doing a good job of it. It definitely felt to me like the show was written in advance rather than just going episode by episode and saying, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next? I feel like Tenchi probably knew where it was going, you know, in the end. And I guess it is described as a mystery fanime. I think the concept of it, might be behind the scenes info. I don't know how much of this was public or even verifiable, but I remember Tenchi like asking what genres weren't done much, and I'm pretty sure he was going for a mystery thing with it because nobody ever does mystery fanime because it's just not popular with the people that make fanime. I don't know. And so that was kind of the theme of it. It was a bit of a mystery. And it did a pretty good job of that. I mean, they definitely set the elements of, well, who did these things and why, and then we kind of find out the who in the end. We don't necessarily get a good why to all of the questions. But yeah, the reason I brought that up is just because, like, basically when you're writing any type of mystery, you have to know what the solution is before you can even start. So it seems clear to me that it was planned out, which is good, refreshing, you know. I absolutely love when artists just kind of fly by the seat of their pants and just see where the story takes them and just make it up as they go along. That's really fun, but it's also very satisfying to see something that's, you know, planned out ahead of time because it's typically much more coherent, much more cohesive, and this was very much that. Also, the water foreshadowing was pretty good, not gonna lie. I didn't understand at the time what that meant, like it was a little confusing in the moment, but then at the end, you realize, oh, okay, got it. So another one of those diamond in the rough shows that came up was Parent Quest. Now, I had actually watched this when it came out. It was one of the few that I actually did watch. It was only 2 episodes. Sadly, I wish there had been more. It was made by Lunoplasty, who used to be known as Poly something. I think just Poly. But yeah, Luno made this show, and it seemed like it was very obvious when you watch it that a lot of it was just improv, but it's hilarious. It's really good stuff. I mean, the writing is just so clever. And again, obviously it wasn't, you know, planned out. You can tell when you're watching it, like, how it was kind of formed. Like, most of it was just making up the lines while recording them, etc. And then just like completely playing it straight and just throwing those in there. You know, it does that thing where it includes some of the bloopers in the actual final cut and things like that. But it's really well done. It's not like super wowing with visuals or anything because you wouldn't expect it to be, but I would describe it as a comedy, and it is very funny. I was actually laughing out loud pretty much the entire time. Luckily, I elected to mute my mic during the stream when it came up because it would have just been me laughing the entire time. I mean, I really, really did laugh pretty much the entire time because just it's definitely my type of humor, and the jokes are just executed so well. Highly recommend that. It's only 2 episodes. It'll only take you about 6 minutes to watch the whole thing, but it is definitely worth seeing. And I know Luno is definitely more into like gaming and streaming type stuff, but I would love to see them do more of this type of stuff. At any rate, it certainly makes me want to go check out their stream, though, because if this is this person's sense of humor, then it is right up my alley. I might look into that. So then immediately following that one was another sort of comedy show. I guess I would just call it a comedy. I don't know how else you would describe it, but Secret Life of Kuno the Cat. This is another one where I had watched a lot of it when it was actually being posted, the first 3 episodes at least. And so I kind of already knew what I was getting myself into going into this one. But wow, I have to say, it's even better than I remembered it being. So like I was saying earlier about how good characters can make any show good, I mean, this is a story about a cat that is secretly training to be a secret agent or, some kind of stealth operative. I don't even know what he's training to be. I legitimately don't, and we don't necessarily know why or any of that. But the characters, they're just so good, and I mean, it doesn't take itself that seriously. So the plot isn't that important, and that's clear. It's more just a vehicle for the characters to express themselves on screen, and it's really good stuff. Like I absolutely love it, and also the voice acting. Like I especially noted that I loved the voice of the main character.
My alarm clock didn't ring, and I didn't woke up because I trained and studied all day long. Then I sprinted to school, but the exams were already over, and I didn't pass.
Just the whole performance of the main character was really, really good, and that made it so much better, because everything just read perfectly, and I knew exactly what it was going for, and I loved it. And I don't know, it was very charming, and it's really funny too. Like it's good to see a show that's trying to be funny and actually succeeding at it, you know what I mean? Because there are a lot of comedies that, or even not comedies, that just try and sell jokes that don't necessarily work, or things that are like obviously specific to a very small group of people and don't necessarily land with a wide audience. But this one, I was pretty much laughing along the entire while. And there was also a lot of like subtlety to it, or rather, maybe not a lot. I don't know. I didn't pay that close attention, but there were some nice little like extra touches, like the cats all sit in a classroom, and it took me until like the second to last episode to realize that they don't have desks. They're all sitting in cardboard boxes. And when I noticed that, I just couldn't help but laugh at it because it just snuck by me. But when I caught it, I was just like, oh, that's so clever. And they never addressed it. It was just part of the scenery, like a joke in itself, just hidden in the scenery. It's so good. It's definitely something that I could see like playing on Cartoon Network. It's so good. But yet again, it's a case of building up towards something and not finishing. Now, but this one is not as big of a deal because it's not super plot driven. It's, like I said, it's mostly about the characters. And you kind of assume, like, in your mind how it's going to end. But we never got the final part. We got episode 7, I want to say part 1, and then there was no final part. So get on that, Aurelian. I really liked it. I really want to see more. And everybody in the audience seemed to receive it pretty well as well. Make more of that. I want to see how Kuno the Cat ends. And possibly a season 2 if you could be bothered. It's so good. So there was one called Zones. It was very short, didn't get continued, so I didn't really know what it was about. That was by Studio Bunny. I can't really say much about that because, yeah, it was unfinished. I mean, it didn't continue. Witch Exam by Nemutai Sleepy Kai Kuno. I'd have to look it up to see what this person goes by now. Their name changes often. But this one kind of wowed me a lot because I don't know if it was actually made within 1 week, but if it was, oh my gosh, like it was by far the longest episode of anything, and it felt like a complete episode, which was really impressive because a lot of these are a little bit fragmented, Like, for example, Predecessor of a New World works really well when you watch the whole thing all the way through, but if you just watch one episode, which is only like a minute long, it doesn't necessarily feel like a concise episode because it's just so short. It's kind of a fragment, which is fine because obviously this is a very limiting challenge, and that's partly the point. But Witch Exam, like, really just goes for the full package and delivers. It sets everything up properly. You know what the stakes are. You know why the character wants to do this. I mean, the main character especially is well established. This is something I've touched on in the first live stream I did. Like, I kind of ranted a little bit how important first episodes are and how crucial it is that you just set everything up properly. And this is a really good example of that. It's probably one of the best I've seen in Fanime, where we know what the stakes are. We know why the characters want this, We know what they're working toward. We know what the goals are. We understand the world for the most part. Like, everything is concisely laid out, and it's very, very well done. It's a shame, really, that it never got continued. I don't even think the video is up anymore. I don't think you could even watch it on YouTube anymore. But it was really good, and I wanted to see where it was going to go. I wanted to see how it was going to play out, because it was all laid out so well. It's like, here's the roadmap. We know where we're trying to go. Let's see, what happens along the way. And there was never another episode, which is understandable because it's clear that a lot of effort went into this, you know? Obviously, being that it was a challenge episode, possibly not as much effort as a standard episode would have, but I mean, it was very well done for what it is. I can't necessarily recommend it because it's not possible to watch it, as far as I know. I guess the only way to watch it is if you look at the old live stream, but no, that was solid. It kind of makes me wish that this person, I need to go look up their channel real quick, see what their name is. Now Pico, that's the one. I hope I pronounced that right. Yeah, it's the same person that made Nellypot, though. Which is really interesting, because I remember when Nellypot came out, I was very critical of it. Very critical. Like, not necessarily in public, but especially among my friends. I mean, I had a lot to say about it, because I thought that the pacing was awkward, and I didn't necessarily know what it was about, but this feels like much improved over, the first episode of Nellypot. Because as I just explained, like, everything was laid out so well in this. And it makes me a little bit sad that Now Pico doesn't really do videos like this anymore. I would love to see them continue with, storytelling videos like, story animations versus the memes that they're doing now. Not that their memes aren't good. Now is actually a very successful meme channel these days. But I think they had a lot to offer in the field of original animated series. So yeah, I'd love to see more content from them. Especially considering this is a person who initiated the second weekly challenge a year after the first one. So, I don't know. Maybe they still have an interest in it. I hope so. But yeah, which exam was A+. I'd recommend it if I could. So anyways, next was Planetary Creation, which was interesting. It's another one that didn't finish, but it kind of cut off like around the halfway mark, so it hadn't necessarily reached that point where it was building up toward the grand finale. So it didn't feel like as much of a cliffhanger, but it does kind of cut off at a point where you're just starting to get familiar with the characters. You're just starting to understand their motivations, what they're all after and why they're in this. So it is a little bit of a letdown when you find out that it's canceled. But I mean, that's understandable. No disrespect. These things happen. But yeah, the Planetary Creation is a show. I feel like I should probably explain what these shows are about. I've been kind of skipping over all of that. Can I go back now, like, retroactively and just, like, make a quick explanation of the shows that I haven't yet? Would it be awkward? Yes, but I should probably do it. So, I've been recommending people watch these things, but not telling them what they're about. So, you've got to, let me see. I did explain Pesh. I didn't explain Predecessor of a New World. That is somewhat of a mystery. It's kind of I don't want to say necessarily thriller, but it's a little tense, right? So, these characters all come to this world. They're all seeking this treasure. Something happens to where all of their exits are locked, and so they're still going after the treasure, but they have to figure out who locked the exits and how to unlock them. So that's kind of what that's about. Parent Quest, you don't really need much of an explanation. You really just need to watch that one and experience it for yourself. Let me put it like that. Secret Life of Kunat the Cat I did explain. Which exam is about pretty much exactly what the title says. It's about people signing up to take an exam that will give them certification as witches. It is a very valuable and prestigious position. I mean, if you actually succeed and get your witch certification, you can either sell it for a lot of money, or you can use it to run a lucrative career as a witch, basically. And so the characters are all aspiring to do this. And the main character's brother is already taking the exam, or has already taken it. And now the main character wants to follow in his footsteps. So that's kind of what that's about. Planetary Creation is another one where the title of the show kind of gives you an idea. It's about teams of space people that create planets. And they are entering into some kind of recent competition to, create planets better than the other teams to win some kind of cash prize. And we find out that the main character is actually more of an artist type who just kind of rolled into the role and stuck with it, basically. You find out his motivations as the show goes on. But it's about people that make planets and how they interact with each other, basically. And it's one of those shows where, again, the story isn't necessarily the focal point. It's a lot more about exploring the characters, and it does a pretty good job of that. And it's good to see how the characters interact with each other and, how they kind of develop through those interactions. I don't know. It's good stuff. I would like to have seen more of it. There are currently 6 episodes, and it unfortunately did not continue. I don't think it will, and that's fine. But if you want to take a brief moment to enjoy some characters for a little while, it's definitely worth checking out. Next on the list is sour candy-filled donuts. Oh, where to begin? So, this one's, I don't actually know what it's about. Let's see. There's Denisico, Denicio del Toro, that girl. And then there's the small, tiny one. She eats a pepper, burns the house down. Now they're on a quest for new houses. I think that's what it's about. And they get up to some shenanigans along the way. I don't know. There was a show called Practice Makers that we watched. I don't remember anything about it. It's not on YouTube anymore. I don't feel like I would recommend it. Then we came to Ume. Now, Ume was actually very well made. It had a really consistent style, and a good style at that. It was very solid, like, visually. A lot of shots with missing backgrounds where it was just a gradient or something, so that was a little awkward because there was just a big pink void most of the time. But other than that, it was visually solid, and the storytelling seemed good, but all the voice acting was in Japanese, and you have to read subtitles the entire time, which is fine. Like, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but let me just say I only watch anime that's dubbed. And so, yeah, it made it a little bit harder for me to watch this one, having to read text. And then a few episodes, I think, used YouTube captions, so my downloaded files didn't have the text, which is my own fault, but I'm pretty sure if you watch it on YouTube, it's fine. Anyway, it's a story about a girl who's she's a plum tree spirit who falls in love with this guy in a high school, I think, or at least wants someone to notice her. And she starts talking with these high school guys, and one of them, I think, she ends up liking him. I don't know if he likes her or not. It's kind of implied. I don't know. It's just that type of shit. You know, you kind of get the gist of where this is going, right? And then she's got her friend who's like a cherry blossom tree who's like everybody falls for. And she's just a plum tree, and she's like, I hope someone will fall for me one day. And then, yeah. But apparently the tree spirits have this very specific code where if humans find out about your existence, you have to die. So that creates some tension throughout the show. It makes cause for concern, and that's kind of what it's about. Now, I've already said this a few times, but this show, right before the grand finale, right before the interesting things happen, cuts off and is never continued. So we spend all this time building up to this big dramatic moment, and then we don't really ever get to experience that. So that's awkward. The person who created it, channel name It's a Showtime. Let me see, that's not right, actually. Sorry, I double checked. No, that is right. The channel name is It's a Showtime. The person immediately went on to create a few other shows, so it kind of seems like this one's probably never getting finished. It has 8 full episodes. I would definitely say that they're worth checking out just for the sheer quality alone, but it does kind of hurt that you don't get to see what happens, like how the whole thing ends, because the last like 3 or so episodes really are just building up toward this ending that never happens. So that's a little awkward, but I thought it was very well produced. Let me see, there's not much to say about the next Undertale generation. Good Morning Illumi only had 1 episode. It's definitely a favorite. I absolutely love it. You know, a lot of the humor actually does land, which is always a plus. Even though there's not really much story, or at least there doesn't seem to be, I do feel like the premise was pretty well set up. It pretty much explained everything that needed to be established, like right off the bat. So we know what the rules are, you know. We don't necessarily know what the stakes are, but we kind of get the general premise. So as far as first episodes go, it's pretty good, and it establishes the relationship between the 2 main characters. So we know which direction it's going to go in general. It's a very good pilot. It's unfortunate that there was never a second episode, because I really liked the overall vibe of it. I liked what it was doing, and like the humor is good. The character interactions are fun. I would love to see more of it. I don't know if it's ever getting continued. But hey, Setabo, I don't think you're watching this. You're probably not. But if you ever are, make episode 2. Good. Yes. Make episode 2. So next up was Maho Glow. Sorry, let me go back. I'm kicking myself. Sorry, I'm so bad at this. I didn't explain. Good Morning Illumi. It's about a new student that transfers into school, and the main character appears to be this nonplussed guy who, according to him, is one of 2 students who are not transfer students in the entire classroom. And he's just kind of like, he's not really, having any of it. He's just not thrilled about anything. He's very just, well, okay, I guess we're doing this now. And one day there's a new student who has a pyramid for a head. Except he's the only one who can see that she has a pyramid for her head. Everyone else is apparently being mind-controlled by a radio frequency wave that she emits that causes them to see her as just an ordinary girl. And she's plotting to take over the school. And basically that's it. That's the that's the whole premise. But it's very well executed and it's quite funny, so I recommend watching it. It also has one of the best disses I've ever seen in a Fanime. Won't spoil that here, just watch it. It's only like 4 minutes long. So yeah, Maho Glow. This one was really interesting. I'm going to say right off the bat, it builds up, ends right before the finale. So if you're watching it and you're wondering where it's going and you see all these cool dramatic plot points happening, rest assured, it's not going to get resolved. I don't know if it's still being worked on or if there are any plans to ever make the last episode. I think it was announced that it was going to be like a movie, which, I mean, by the standards of this show, could have been like, 10, 15-ish minutes would qualify as a movie, because the episodes are pretty short. But it's a magical girl show about a team of magical girls who slowly come together. They also form an anime club, because every group of magical girls have to have some mundane facade tying them together, right? Such as working at a cafe or being in a club.
We're now accepting people.
But they're not just any old magical girls. They don't fight evil in the real world, or rather the common world. They fight evil in the evil world. They travel to dungeons housing evil spirits, which they must then defeat. And that's kind of all you really need to know about it. I mean, it gets pretty dramatic, and you don't necessarily know where it's going to go. There's some pretty interesting character motivation setups, plots and things. A lot of very, intriguing elements, I guess I would say. Just things that are set up that you really wonder how they're going to play out. And unfortunately, we don't know yet. But maybe someday Ambrose will make the final episode. Also, the show has no voices. It is all, you have to read all of it. Someone dubbed like the first 5 episodes. I highly recommend, like, if anyone just is bored or wants to voice act or something, like, please someone dub this show. Like, it deserves it, because it's pretty well made, and I mean, it's very watchable. It just doesn't have any voices. That's like the last piece of the puzzle that is missing. Also, sound effects might be good too. But anyway, another one of those diamonds in the rough. Not that the rest of the content was rough, because it's definitely not. But I mean, another shining thing that came out of this that I'd forgotten about was Rats by Heikatsu Kyokai. There were 3 episodes. I think only 1 was actually done during the time of the challenge. The second one is listed as a 12-hour challenge, and the 3rd episode is like 30 seconds long. But it's so good. I don't want to go on too long because I've praised Heikatsu Kyokai quite a bit in the past already, but I just love the way that she writes characters, and also just like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but like just the vibe. It's a show that is very, very self-aware, so it knows what it's trying to be, and it's succeeding at it at the same time, while also telling you exactly what it's trying to be, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know, it wears itself on its sleeve, but it's so well done. Like, it's really entertaining. I mean, to explain what it's about would even be difficult, because I couldn't necessarily tell you. It's really just about a school club doing silly school club things, I suppose. And every episode ends with the characters talking about how the episode was made and which character made the episode and like how they feel about it, which is actually pretty good. It's really funny. I like that segment a lot. So yeah, it definitely deserves more than 2.5 episodes. I will say that. I would love to see more of it, because by the time you're done watching it, even though it's so short, like, you're really invested in the characters, like, right off the bat. You absolutely fall in love with them. And again, the humor is well executed, which surprisingly seems to be a theme for this challenge, is a well-executed humor, because I don't say things like this often, but Fanime struggles with humor quite a bit.
I hope she doesn't make us late. Mrs. Carter doesn't like it when someone is late.
Why are you late?
Oh crap! Bye, Mom! Sometimes I worry about that girl. What you doing?
waiting for you.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, then. Let's go.
I mean, most shows aren't necessarily comedic by nature. Like, they're not, primarily comedies. Typically, they're meant to be more dramatic and serious. But every now and then, creators will sprinkle in these jokes. And a lot of the time, they just don't land. Or a lot of people will try and parrot, anime humor. Try and just do things that, shows they've seen have done and aren't necessarily funny if you don't pull them off just right.
Gyro, what are you doing up here?
Dang it, Rosary! I told you to stop calling me that! My name's not Gyro, it's Jiro!
That's something that comes up a lot. And it's actually, it can be kind of painful. It can really detract from a show because when a joke fails spectacularly, it creates so-called cringe. I mean, when you see comedy that fails, it can be really hard to watch.
Candy shoved me in the fridge.
At least you weren't in the closet. Because we all know that you turn gay when you get into the closet.
So yeah, it's almost surprising just how well all of the humor for these weekly challenges actually comes across, because all the ones that were supposed to be funny, I found to be quite funny. Which I guess would otherwise feel like a rare thing, but no, these are all pretty solid. Sorry, I said the creator of Rats was Heikatsu Kyokai. I think that was the previous name of the channel. It's now Deiji and Droop. Just to set that record straight. I know I keep circling back and switching topics on the fly to go back and correct myself, but I'm sorry. You guys know who you're dealing with here. So anyway, Spur of a Banished Soul was another one we watched. It was one episode. It was created by the same people that made Ghost Club. It's not currently on YouTube anymore, so you can't really watch it. And it also only had one episode. It was never continued, but it was about a girl and her cat who play spirit games. So things like, the hide and seek with a doll, like Midnight Man type of stuff, which was a pretty interesting idea, and I would love to have seen it play out more because it could have been very tense and also creepy. I kind of ranted about it the first stream, wherein we watched it, the first Fanime stream I did a month ago. Just because I saw it in my files and I wasn't sure what it was, so I put it on. Not even realizing at the time, that it was a weekly challenge submission. But yeah, it turned out it was. So we watched it again in the weekly challenge stream. And I kind of ranted the first time, though, about how some of the horror cinematography needed work, which was really the only downside to it. I mean, the art was very pleasant to look at. It had a good sense of style, as all their works really do. I love that team. I wish that Ghost Club was still ongoing. But yeah, considering the video was taken down, I gotta assume it was something that they kind of did on a whim and decided pretty quickly not to continue with. But I think it had a lot of potential, and it would have been an interesting idea to see play out. It was pretty short, so we don't really know much about it. There's not really much more to say about it because it's so short, but it was well made for what it was. Again, the horror cinematography is very important when you're trying to create fear, and some of that was, not necessarily as striking as it could have been, I guess. That's what I want to say. I guess is how I would describe it. But I would love to have seen the series continue and where it could have gone, with some refinement. So next up is something I couldn't even begin to tell you the plot of. This is a show called Milk by Alexandria Baker. Now, Alexandria Baker's entire channel is gone now. I don't know if she's still out there. I don't know if she has a new channel, if she still animates at all. I have no idea because I don't know how to find her. But she created Milk for the weekly challenge, which was a 6-episode series. But I don't have episode 1. I was not able to find it ever. And I remember not being able to find it when it released because this, the weekly challenge, this was all coming out at a time when I was downloading everything. So for me to not have it downloaded means that it probably got taken down before I could download it. And the entire series uses a lot of radio music, a lot of pop stuff, things that you typically wouldn't want to use because they would get your content taken down. And my guess is that's what happened. In fact, that's my guess as to what happened to Alexandria Baker's entire channel. Can't verify that, but it's pretty likely as far as I can tell. Anyway, Milk is a show about a young fairy, an aspiring fairy who has spell-casting powers, which are apparently not that common, even though it's a very supernatural world. There are, beast men
Hey there, cutie.
and monster people at every turn. It's just an ordinary thing. This is just the world they live in. And Milk is a fairy. She wants to be a fairy godmother. Or, just a guardian fairy, essentially. And so she agrees to do this for some girl she randomly meets and decides to be friends with. And that's kind of what it's about, but I don't know what it's like if there's more to it than that, or if there's like an overarching plot, because that's just the premise, but it's just so bizarre. I would highly recommend going back to the stream and checking that one out. I couldn't give you a timestamp, but it's in that last stream. Oh man, what an experience. It's one of those ones where I can't tell if it's supposed to feel as surreal as it does, or if it was just a pure happy accident. But I'd highly recommend going and giving it a watch, because it just, I don't know, it invokes so much thought. I don't know what to say. I can't even describe it. It's an experience. It's very much an experience. I had not watched any of it when it was, coming out. But now that I have seen it, I wish I had seen it sooner. So yeah, it's not really on YouTube anymore, so it's hard to recommend something that you can't necessarily go out and watch. But it is on the stream recording, so there's that at least. And the last thing we watched for this stream was Vengalaxis, which I've seen actually a few times already, because it was made by Mojo Crystal Tokyo, also known as Kisaka Toriyama, who also happens to be my best friend. So I've seen this show a few times. I know a few things about it. This was another one of the weekly challenges that actually did get finished. It was only 9 episodes, not the full 13, but that's fine. It's a show about 2 best friends and just their misadventures as they both try to get through college. That's really it. It's not very plot driven. It's definitely character driven. And it really just kind of tells the story of the relationship of these 2 people. So yeah, I wouldn't call it a drama or anything like that. It's definitely a slice of life show, but like a traditional slice of life, where it's not like, oh, look at all the wacky things we're doing. It's more like, it's very casual. It's very casual. And there's a lot of humor sprinkled in. It's got some pretty solid jokes in it.
What is this creature?
A dog.
Well, no shit.
But for the most part, it's chill. It's a very chill vibe. So if you're looking for like an animated series to watch as you fall asleep or something like that, this is like the perfect viewing material for that. Or if you just like, I don't know, got home from work, don't want to focus on, flashing colors and bright lights. It's very mellow. And again, it's extremely character driven. So the primary appeal of the show are these 2 characters and how they interact with one another, and just the things that they face and how they face them. It's also a rare case of a weekly challenge wherein it got continued. So it started out as a weekly challenge, it ended as a weekly challenge, but now there's a season 2, of which there are 4 or 5 episodes, something like that. I don't remember exactly how many. I know that currently there are plans to continue it. I don't know when it will be continued. I know that the main male lead has to be recast, which is the main thing halting production, and just like he said, is very busy in life right now. But yeah, as far as we know, it will most likely get continued someday. But yeah, if you've seen the first 9 episodes, definitely check out the season 2. It's more of the same and just better. So there you go. Anyway, now that I've spent, half an hour or so talking about various weekly challenges, I wanted to just kind of go on about the concept in general. So this third round of things is being prompted by Giselle, rightfully so, considering Giselle recently did a weekly challenge without even it being like a thing. She just made one for 13 weeks straight. Or was it 15? I think it was 15. In the form of Nemomiya the Chaotic Hero, which I did talk about in the first episode. But yeah, so now Giselle is opting to host a third weekly challenge, which will be running throughout the summertime. And she recently posted the video on it, stating that it will be starting on May 30th. So if anyone wants to get in on this stuff and give us another whirl, that'll be the date for it. May 30th was when it will begin, but I'm not sure if that's when you post the first episode, or I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, the idea is that you just once a week post an episode. Typically you give yourself a deadline. That was the idea of the initial challenge when I made it, was that you would pick a day for yourself to be your deadline. That way, every show would have its own day that it came out, thus creating a recurring weekly block of content. So you would know, like, Wednesday is going to be Predecessor of a New World, and, Thursday would be Vengalaxis Day. I don't necessarily know how Giselle's version is going to work in terms of deadlines and things. I don't know if it really matters. It's not like there's a rigid structure of rules. You can pretty much just do what you want. The idea is just to encourage people to make things. And I already know that a lot of people in the Fanime World Discord are planning on doing this. Some people have already even started. I mean, it's been talked about for a long time. We've known for months that this was going to be something that everyone was taking part in, the weekly challenge throughout the summer. So at this point, it's just a matter of waiting and seeing what ends up getting made. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. I don't have an official count on how many people are planning to participate, but I know it's at least 5. And anyone else that, sees either Giselle's video or this video and thinks to get involved, please. I would absolutely love to see more of them. And I definitely plan on live streaming whatever the results are. We'll do watch parties for them, I suppose. Maybe even on a weekly basis if enough things get posted. If there's enough content coming out on a weekly basis, we can stream on a weekly basis and just watch all of it. If not, we'll just wait till the end of summer and do it all at once. But yeah, the original weekly challenge 2015 was created just kind of, like I said, to push people to make more content, because we were in kind of a dead zone where not many episodes were coming out anymore. And I just wanted to see if anyone was up to it, really. It was kind of a way of pushing people to test the hypothesis of quantity over quality, I guess. Because there were so many people that were so caught up in this notion of, I gotta make this thing perfect, to a point that their episodes would become daunting and they would just never get anything made. And so by instating the weekly challenge, I was killing 2 birds with 1 stone, wherein we were, first of all, pushing people to make things in the first place, which was a big one. But also, like I said, testing that hypothesis to see how much quantity matters over quality, if at all. And I will say, there's always a place for well-made animation and well-told stories. I never in any way would want to deprecate those things, because quality content is absolutely worth pursuing. But I've always kind of established that I'm more a fan of consistent storytelling, especially in a medium like this, where you can tell any story you want, especially in a visual way, because you can tell it precisely how you want. So I love to see what people come up with. And I have to say, after finally watching the results of this thing 3 years later, 4 years later, 3.5 years later, I am satisfied. I think that there is, some plausibility to the notion. I think it is viable to put more attention on the quantity. Now, I went down the list and discussed all the shows that we watched on the stream. We didn't watch everything. There were 3 from the first weekly challenge that we didn't get to, because the stream was over 5 hours, and it kind of died down at that point. I decided to end it there and pick up later on. So there were 3 more shows that we didn't watch, but I know that one in particular, Ghost Heart, which was made by Afro Loli, it's only 1 episode, but it has over 10,000 views, which is quite a bit for something that was made for a weekly something that was made in under a week. Having 10,000 views, especially in the realm of Fanime, is a pretty big deal. And I'm pretty sure Naupiko's show, Witch Exam, had a similar amount of views. Granted, Naupiko was a much bigger channel at the time. And it's not universal. I mean, a lot of these don't have that many views, or just didn't get that many at the time because they're smaller channels, unknown, and I mean, you're trying to sell a new story to people. It actually is kind of difficult, especially if you don't promote it a lot. But it just kind of shows that it is plausible. And if we could get this kind of thing to be more of a regular thing, Fanime might kind of be more of a thing in general. It's the type of thing that, would help to put it back on the map. I mean, if it's possible to create an episode in a week and have an ongoing series, especially one that tells an overarching story, then that makes the idea sound a lot more viable versus, spending a year making an episode, even if it's a really good episode. So yeah, it's definitely not practical to try and make an episode in under a week. You obviously have to make sacrifices, but I do really like the result of it. I think that some very good stuff has come out of it, and a lot of it I found to be genuinely entertaining. Because a lot of them really did a good job of striking that balance between effort and just entertainment, Because something to always keep in mind is that production value does not equal entertainment value. And I must say, obviously this is my opinion, it's not going to apply to everyone, but I found a lot of these very low production value shows to have more entertainment value than some equivalent high production shows. I found a lot of these more entertaining than adjacent shows of higher effort, just because there's such a free-spirited attitude toward it when you look at something that doesn't have that high of a standard put on it, and you say, well, if it's just going to be a week, I'll just do what I want, I'll just have fun with it. And if you're having fun making it, pause. I gotta choose my words very carefully, because, I don't know, just because you have fun making something doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be more fun to watch it. But at least for me, I've found that that is often the case. So it's not a universal rule, but I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know. I guess an overall moral, like, if there's anything I've learned from this, it's that you shouldn't take yourself that seriously. It's nice to have things that are just silly sometimes. Even if it's not all the time, you don't have to turn your whole channel into just silly nonsense that you're churning out at a constant basis. You don't have to do that, but it's nice to see what people make when they're not, pressuring themselves that hard, when it's understood that the quality is not going to be the greatest. Now, again, I'm not saying people should stop trying. I guess more what I'm getting at is that you should evaluate how hard you're trying versus how hard you need to try. Which is why I always say this a lot, in almost every video where I talk about Fanime, I say this. Rule 1 of making a Fanime is establishing the goal of the Fanime. So if you're just trying to entertain people, you probably don't need to pour hundreds of hours into it, right? If you're trying to make people laugh, you can do that with a very low budget. If you're trying to tell a story, you probably don't need to focus too much on flashy visuals. You could probably make a more stiff video if it has a lot of good audio and storytelling. And those are just examples, but yeah, basically it's really important to understand what your goal is before you start a project of this nature. And by that I mean a Fanime, because it's such a daunting task to animate a show by yourself, no matter what the standards are. Even to make something that's just dumb and like silly and kind of trollish nonsense, it does require a lot more effort than you might expect. So it's very important when you're going into something that is that much of an investment that you know what you want to get out of it. But yeah, watching through all of these again, some of them for the first time, the biggest takeaway is I really love this idea. I'm glad that people have kind of picked up on it. I'm glad that there was a second weekly challenge that I wasn't even involved with. Like, someone took the idea and ran with it and just did another one. And people actually, joined on and participated. There are even more shows that exist because of it. And some of them, even ones that I haven't seen, I've heard about. I couldn't tell you how much I've heard about Terror Girls. I haven't watched a single episode of it, but it was created as a weekly challenge by Emily Loves Cookies. Even to the point where it got a fan spin-off, at least for one episode. So there's a lot of potential there, and it's really exciting, too, just to see what we might end up with. I can't wait to see what comes out of this third wave of this challenge. I think I'll maybe attempt to join in. I tried to join in the first time, and I fell on my face miserably. I ended up tossing around 3 different show ideas and then giving up on all of them, even though I did like half an episode of each. I made like half an episode of 3 different shows and didn't finish a single one and never participated in the challenge after that. So now I've just got like 3 very poorly made half episodes lying around that will never see the light of day. But I'd love to give it a whirl again. I don't know. I'm going to be pretty busy this summer, with, work and moving and all of that, but I'll give it a shot, maybe. I'll try to try. At any rate, I'm really excited to see what comes out of it from the people that I know will actually do it, from the people that are planning to participate that I actually know will make things, which is most of them. So I definitely can't wait to be doing another podcast like this one sometime in the future, where I'm sitting back and talking about my opinion of all the new shows that got made for the new weekly challenge. Anyway, that's my my huge discussion of Fanime related stuff out of the way. Mostly that was all I had to talk about here. I had a few topics written down, but they were just kind of general things that don't necessarily need to be brought up right away. And I've already, the recording's over an hour, but I think after I cut out all the long pauses, it'll probably be like more closer to 55-ish minutes. So we'll go for a little bit longer, but there was one other thing that I really wanted to bring up, and I didn't know how to make a discussion out of it, so I probably can't talk about it for very long. But very recently I was thinking about this. It came up for a very specific reason, actually. Someone recently made an MAP to the song Cartoon Heroes, and the specific remake of the remix of the song, rather, the upbeat dancey one that used to be in DDR. And the theme was to take a different cartoon show from your childhood and just animate your part to that. So it would be like you would pick your show and you would animate the characters from that show, whatever. And that was the whole thing. And it was a pretty good MAP as far as they go. I mean, there was trouble filling it and getting parts turned in. So it ended up being that the person who started it filled in a lot of the extra parts. And she really put a lot of effort into it. And it shows. I mean, it's pretty solid as a result. I know Shribbit also picked up a lot of parts. There were a lot of, or not a lot, but there were a few Fanimators involved in it. But it reminded me of something that I had seen before. So I had to dig deep, and let me tell you, it was a struggle to find this thing, because it's not tagged in any traditional way. There's a video from 2011, it's called The Fanime Theme Song. It's described as a collab, so the word MAP is not attached to this thing in any way. This was before MAP was actually a common term. I even looked it up to try and find MAP being used around this time frame, and it wasn't. The earliest I could find use of the word MAP was like late 2012, which is really interesting to me because I feel like it's something that's just always been around, but apparently that's not the case. But anyway, the Fanime theme song is, for all intents and purposes, an MAP to the song Cartoon Heroes, the remix, including just a lot of Golden Age classic Fanimators and a lot of their shows. And oh my god, if it's not the most nostalgic thing I have ever seen. Even though I wasn't there for like a lot of the shows that are included in this thing, like I wasn't there when they were being made, I remember watching this video when it was released. Basically, I came into the community at the same time this video was finished. So just at the tail end of the so-called Golden Age. And I mean, this thing has so many names in it that you'll probably recognize if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time. So just to list a few of them, I mean, it's got Setabo, it's got Jellajade, Nihamioki, Eternal Ashley, Bloody Pocky, Missy Random, Missy Luna, Roxy, Lenrin Twin, Lioness Jenna, Miyasha 89. Now that's one that some people probably don't know, but she created a show called My Dead Sister, which was eventually removed from YouTube, which I'm pretty sure she did like willingly, took it down basically for saying that it wasn't that good, and I think she was planning to remake it and just never did. But it was one of the first Fanimes that I watched, and it almost immediately got taken down after I saw it, so I didn't have the opportunity to save it, and I've missed it ever since. I actually liked it quite a bit, and Kiara also was a fan of it, so we kind of bonded over that, I guess, but like, unfortunately, neither of us can ever watch it again because it's gone, and I don't think Miyasha's ever going to upload it again. She did actually return at one point in like the 2015 era and made a show called Catboy Chate, I think, under a different name, but like, yeah, My Dead Sister is gone forever. Anyway, that's my Miyasha story, thanks. Also, Elite Paranoid was in this MAP, and Tamana as well. And there was one other person in this thing who, like, whose art seemed really familiar, but I couldn't place it. And that person was listed in the credits as Sideways Asian. The channel is now called Neil Byrne. So seeing their part, it was really well made. It was one of the better parts for sure. It struck me for some reason, and I couldn't tell why it hit me that way. So I checked out this person's channel, looked it up, tried to find him, ended up locating the new name, and I found out that this is actually the person. Neil Byrne is the guy who made the show called Conflict, which I had been struggling to find for years. I very specifically remember watching it when it came out, but the first part of episode 1 is not up anymore. It got taken down for some reason. So all that's up is episode 1 part 2, which is still really good and highly worth watching, even though it's not being continued. But man, I remember ranting about this so many times, about how I couldn't find this show that I remember about an Irish guy who, you know, fights a giant monster and wins. And lo and behold, just watching this MAP that I was only watching because I saw another MAP that someone happened to make that happened to include Fanimators, I found this show that I've been looking for years. I'm really sad that the first episode's not up anymore. But nonetheless, it feels good to be able to locate something that you thought was gone forever, or like that you just would never find. And that's such a common thing with Fanime. It's such a nebulous community, you know, things just come and go all the time. Even with the weekly challenge, I was telling people on the stream, like, a lot of the shows that we were watching are no longer up, so you can't watch them on YouTube anymore unless you see the playback from the stream, because I happened to download them all back when they were being released. And it's really strange. I don't know, I guess that's kind of a common theme with YouTube in general, but it never really struck me as much as it does with Fanime, because so many of these are things that I would rewatch later on, but if they get taken down, like, you've got nothing. You've got nowhere to go. You got channels like Fanime Reuploader, who has a few of like the old age stuff, but I don't know. I'm really obsessive about that type of thing. I don't like to lose things forever. I don't like things to be gone permanently. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm like so paranoid that I constantly download Fanime episodes, because I'm afraid that they might get deleted the day after. And you never know, like sometimes they do. I've had shows that I downloaded for Fanime Update that by the time the Fanime Update got made, the show was already taken down. And not just once that happened multiple times. So it's a very real thing. I feel like Fanime preservation is very important. Basically, if you like a show a lot, I would highly recommend saving it in some way, because it could go away at any time. And it's not like it's going to get re-released on Blu-ray 30 years down the line. I mean, if it's only on someone's computer and YouTube, and they delete it off of YouTube, and then decide not to repost it, or they delete it off their computer, or they lose it off their computer, which has also happened. I've had people ask me for copies of their episodes because they lost the files and like had already removed it off YouTube. And luckily I do have a lot of episodes copied, so like I was able to give people their own content back. You know, so like Fanime preservation is a big deal, at least to me anyway. As silly as that may sound. Because it's just crazy to me that you can enjoy something so profoundly and something can have such an impact on your life, which maybe sounds overly dramatic, but I mean, think about the age you were when you first started watching Fanime, and I mean, really, like, this can have an impact on people's lives in some kind of way, even if it's not massive. And just, you know, to one day not be able to ever see that thing again, it's just harsh. It's like, imagine if Toy Story was just gone one day. Imagine if they just removed Toy Story from YouTube and there were no copies of it anywhere. No one had it downloaded. Because that happens with Fanime all the time. Obviously, that's not a realistic example because that'll never actually happen. But just, I don't know, think about the connotations of that, I suppose. And then all you've got are the memories. And the memories are never as good as the real thing. Well, actually, oftentimes they're better. Sometimes it is better just to have things in memory, because especially with Fanime, typically when you revisit it, it's not going to be as good as you remembered it being, but you know what, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It could still be very fulfilling to see something again that you haven't seen in 10 years. Nostalgia is a powerful thing, and if you want to get hit really hard with some nostalgia, check out the Fanime theme song video. Oh my gosh, what a blast that is. I mean, even just like looking down the list of names is nostalgic enough, just knowing the relevance of all these people, and also like having met some of them. Seeing where they're at now versus where they were, you know, in 2010 when they made this thing, it's incredible. It really hits hard. But also a major takeaway for me from this the Fanime theme song video was that it really sparked something in me that I wish there were more things like this. And there are a few these days, not a whole hell of a lot, but there are a few. Just kind of like big collabs that include a lot of people that kind of create an imprint, if that makes sense. They create an impression of what the community is like at that point in time. Because if you look at this Fanime theme song video from 2011, it really does paint an accurate picture of what the community looked like in 2010. Because, I mean, these are names that were relevant at that time, and this is what they were making at that time. And it's also, you know, the song itself is representative of that time, and just all the work therein, the themes of it, the vibes of it. It's like a real blast from the past. I mean, it takes you right back. And I wish there were more things like that. And I think I want to make an MAP. Basically is where this conversation is going. I think I want to make an MAP for Fanime. Or at least just this weird little animation community we've got, even if it's not necessarily Fanime specific. Because to try and think of like other examples of this type of project being out there, you know, like a big major collab that really feels representative of a time period. I mean, the only other one we've got in MAP form is probably the World Go Boom MAP, which was 2014. Well, started in 2014. I don't think it actually got finished until like 2016 or something. It took forever, which is partly my fault because I dropped, like many others. Also, the funny thing about these three MAP, I've mentioned 3 MAPs so far. So there's the Cartoon Heroes MAP, the Fanime theme song MAP, and the World Goes Boom MAP. Eternal Ashley was in all 3 of them. What the heck? One of them's not even Fanime related. Eternal Ashley was in the 2011 Fanime theme song MAP, the the 2014 World Goes Boom MAP, and the 2019 Cartoon Heroes MAP. Not for any particular reason. She's just been there all along and is just casually doing her shit, being omnipresent and not making a big deal about it. Good lord. Eternal Ashley, I'll have you know, is a legend. Pretty sure she's also an animation school graduate now, so good lord. Legend status. Also, I mentioned a few names in the list of people that were in the Fanime theme song. One that really stood out to me was Jellajade. I don't know if a lot of people today remember Jellajade. I'm sure people that are familiar with this old video will. But she was a part of the early YouTube animation scene, like not necessarily Fanime. She didn't do episodes or anything like that, but she had a lot of like meme videos and PMVs and things like that. And she had a very particular style and a nice little persona character that appeared in most of the videos. Very particular style, very particular sense of humor. And she was a really good animator, like...
Hey, what's up? It's Evan from the future. So, when I recorded this podcast originally, I had this little aside for a few minutes about Jellajade and how I couldn't find her. I thought her channel was deleted. I didn't know what name she was going by anymore. And after about 5 minutes of searching while editing the video, I found her channel. It's still up, so I basically cut all of that out, and here's some footage of Jellajade stuff. It's still there. I was dumb. I just didn't search hard enough. It wasn't even that hard to find. So yeah.
I used to love her content so much back in the day. She was one of those people that led me to Fanime. Like, she was one of those people that got me into this, like, digital animation stuff back in, 2011. As a matter of fact, most of the people in that video were, like, excluding a few of the bigger channels that didn't partake in that Fanime theme song. I mean, Tamana, Linus Jenna, Mizuluna, Jellajade, Nyamioki, like, these were all people whose channels I was just, like, looking at before I discovered what Fanime was, because they had made, like, all their little memes and PMVs and things, and, like, following that chain is what led me here. And that's why it's so awesome seeing them all in this video. I don't know, because it just really brings me right back. Like, this is essentially where I started. This is ground zero for me. But yeah, something I brought up was that I'd really love to see more stuff like this. Like, just, I don't know, these community monoliths, not monolith, but like, I guess artifacts, you know what I mean? Like, this is one of those artifacts from the golden age. It's like looking back at the old Fanime World Forum. It's like looking back at archived snapshots of Fanime Tube. Things like that. It's like looking back at the results videos for the original Fanime Awards. It's incredible stuff. And there's not as much of that anymore. And I'd love to see more of it. I'd love to see more community activities. Things that just bring people together and create these snapshot moments. The equivalent of having a picture hanging on a wall, a photograph. And although it's not as concise as a 3-minute MAP video, I will say I did kind of get that vibe from watching the weekly challenge episodes all through. Especially back to back, because a lot of them used a similar pool of voice actors. I mean, a lot of the people making the shows were also voicing in other shows by other people. So you get a lot of the same voice actors in a lot of different shows. And also just the vibe of it. I mean, it really brings you back to that 2015 era to just watch all these. Same way that World Go Boom kind of like accurately replicates the era of 2014. Even though the whole thing wasn't made in 2014, a lot of it was. So it does capture that second golden age of things. I don't know, it's very good vibe material, if that makes sense. If you want to put yourself in a certain mood, like, just, there you go. But yeah, basically the conclusion is, I think I want to host an MAP. I don't know when or if I'll actually do that. Maybe sometime this summer. We'll see what happens. Summer would be a good time. I'll have to pick a good song, though, something that feels representative of either where we're at or where we wish we were, you know what I mean? Something that represents the time. I'll think about that one. It's been a lot of fun, anyways, this animation hour. I know I didn't talk that much about animation in general. It was more a discussion of specific things this time around. And sometimes it'll be that. It's nice to look at specific projects, though, every now and then, because there are things to be, first of all, observed about them, but also learned from them. Also, I know I kind of said, like, early on that the idea of broadening this thing up was that I could take more broad topics and just discuss them at length. Things that are related to animation in general, not necessarily Fanime specifically. And that is true. That was kind of the goal behind that. But I must say, like, just the sheer number of topics that there are out there makes it pretty hard. So I'm gonna have to come up with a way to like either narrow this thing down or like select specific topics. I don't know. Maybe I'll just, I don't know, suck it up and start using all the quality topics I've come up with. Because the thing is, like, I keep coming up with all these great like talking points, but I feel like I want to make more like standard format videos about them. Like something more in the 10-minute range where I just talk specifically about a very specific topic. But I don't know if I'll ever actually do that, even though I keep telling myself I want to. So maybe I'll just use those topics that I've got that I keep saying, oh no, but this would be a better standalone video. Maybe I'll just use those for talking points for the animation hour. I don't know. There's plenty to work with, but if there's anything like animation related that you would love to hear me talk about, or any like specific animations, it could be like a, I don't know, an anime or something. Or even just an independent animation on YouTube. Like, if there's something you think I should check out that might be worth discussing or might have things that could be discussed about it, let me know. Like, give me recommendations. I'll check things out, like, for sure. Always love to see new things. Actually, I asked that question of a friend group a while ago, and I got some really good answers. Things that I had no idea existed, and now I know about them. That's how I found out about Imara. I've still only watched the first episode. I need to watch the rest of it. But that could be a whole video right there. We'll just talk about Imara. I'll check that out sometime. Anyway, I've been Evan, you've been chill. Continue to do so. I'll see you guys next time.
Join the student council. We're now accepting people.